Hello and welcome to another video of our channel. In this video, I'm going to cover a topic that is a hot commodity these days, and that is how to build serverless applications in the cloud.
My name is Syed Shah, and I'm the founder and CTO of 12Tech.
In this example, we're gonna build an API which is as follows. So this is very simple API that we want to build. So this sample API is going to provide data about cities, and if you want to get a list of all cities, you just do a get on the root endpoint. And then if you want to get data about a specific city, you use this endpoint. And of course, when you are adding a city, you need to pass the data related to that city. And this is what I thought of, although actually in real world, you would pass more data, much more data for a city. But since in addition to serverless computing, we would be using a NoSQL database, the structure doesn't really matter as far as the resource allocation is concerned, because NoSQL databases doesn't enforce a strict schema for the data that you put in. Okay, this is the API that we'll be building, and now let's go back to our terminal. So first thing is you need to install the SAM CLI. To build serverless API, we would be using SAM that is provided by AWS. SAM means Serverless Application Model, like an end-to-end serverless deployment tool. It provides a CLI, and also it provides extensions over Cloudformation, which is AWS infrastructure as code solution. It extends that and makes it easier and provides shorthand notations for us to provision serverless resources. So first step is to install the SAM CLI. And since I'm on a Mac, I have Brew. So I'm just going to use Brew to install the CLI. And then use this command to install the actual CLI. I already installed it, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just reinstalling it, so that's why you see this. And now, since SAM has been installed, you just make sure that it is available. All right. So SAM has been installed, and now we are going to initialize our application. And to initialize that, we use SAM init. Okay. Most of the time, it's better to just use one of the quick start templates. So I'm gonna use one of the quick start templates. I'm gonna select Node, but you can select whatever your language of choice. And then we're gonna call it cities. Let's call it cities. Yeah. Okay, now we're gonna select which quick start template we want to use. Since this is an API, the best match is basically number 8, which is web backend. But if you are building for the first time, if you want to get a feel of it, it's better to use the first one because it has the minimal code. Okay. Now if we go to cities tab, let's analyze the structure. There is actually a README, so that tells us about the structure. But real quick, this is what needs to be looked at first, and that is template.yml file. So as I mentioned previously, SAM framework is built on top of Cloudformation, and Cloudformation is AWS infrastructure as code service. You use Cloudformation to specify your entire infrastructure as a code, right? As a YAML or a JSON files. And SAM provides an extension of Cloudformation and makes it easy for us to provision serverless infrastructure. If we use SAM, we'll end up writing less code in our YAML file to provision resources because SAM provides a shorthand notation. Also, SAM also provides access to full set of commands, everything that is available in Cloudformation. So, although you have shorthand notation for serverless infrastructure, for serverless resources, but you also have the full power of Cloudformation at your disposal if you want to use it. Like suppose if I want to provision an RDS instance or a Cognito pool or anything, right? I can use the same file to do that by just using Cloudformation. So as you can see, the first one is basically a function. It's called the get all items function. This is similar to what we want to build, which is to get list of all cities. So we're just gonna modify this to use to implement our API, and it also passes a reference to a table, which is a DynamoDB table, which we will look into soon. But if you look at the source code for this function, so you go to source and handlers, and this is the get all items. So it's basically getting the table, and then it's just gonna do a scan on all the items of the table, just gonna return that. So this is what we can use for get all cities. We probably don't need to change anything in this function at this point. And the other function is basically the get by ID function. This is the function which we're going to use to retrieve cities by ID. If you look at the path, it basically has an ID, which is one of the path parameters, which we would use to get the ID of the city that needs to be retrieved. And this is the post when we need to add a new city. And now if you come, let's look into the table. SAM provides this resource called simple table, where you can create a DynamoDB table that only has one primary key. If you need something more like primary and secondary keys and additional stuff, then you need to use the Cloudformation resources for DynamoDB. So right now we just need a simple DynamoDB table. So we are just using this directive. Okay. So actually we can probably get away with not having to edit any of these, right? But if you want to, add more stuff or add more fields, for example, add more functions, this is where you would do it, or change paths to of existing functions. That's how you would normally do it. So basically generate from a quick start template and then modify that as per your needs. But at this point, I don't think that we need to do it for our API. All right. So next thing is to build, and we will build using the command called build. So the build completed, and what SAM just did was that it built our source code, or this is Node.js code, right? So it basically installed all the dependencies and then created staging folders, which are here, which we're gonna use now to actually deploy our changes to the cloud. So this is our staging folder, which SAM build command created. Next, we will deploy using this command, which is being specified here. We're gonna call it cities, the stack name, the Cloudformation stack name basically. Okay. So now what it's gonna do is after listing out what is getting created, and then once we confirm, it's gonna initiate a CloudFormation deployment. And if you've used CloudFormation before, this should be familiar. The deployment is complete, and before we actually invoke our API, let's take a quick peek at the resources from the AWS console. So these are all the stacks for CloudFormation, and then this is the one that we just created. And if you go and look at the resources, you would see all the resources that were specified in our YAML file. Okay, and this is the URL for our API gateway. So now we're gonna invoke using this API. So since I would be doing this from the command line, let me just create an environment variable. And then let's first do a get. So we shouldn't be getting anything back. We just got an empty result set. Now we're going to add a city, and then we're going to do another get. In order to add a city, we need to create the data for city. So new city. As we know, our schema, it's basically we need to specify the ID, and then after that we can specify anything we want to. So let's start with this. ID is and then after that you specify the other fields for our city, which we identified in the documentation, which we identified earlier. These are one thing which I incorrectly mentioned earlier was that ID is going to be an integer. It's going to be a string. Usually you would use UUIDs, right? For this example, I'm using numbers. City is where our office is located. Okay, so and then let's use curve again to post this. Finance city. Okay, the post was successful. And now when you do a get, you'll see that this city just came up. Let's add another city. I live in Union County, so that's why I'm using the city that I'm most familiar with. All right. And now when you do we basically overwrote our previous city because we didn't specify why. So let's do this. Now, if you post this again, and if you do a get again, you will see two entries, right? So 1 and 2. Okay, I think as far as our API is concerned, we have built an API, and surprisingly, without having to make any code changes. But our API was very simple for this example, right? In real world, we would make code changes to the template. One thing which we can check is basically pulling up city based on the ID. So if you do this, this should also be working. Yes, here it is. Okay. So as far as building the API that we planned for this video, for this example, we have successfully built the API using SAM. And SAM produced a YAML file, which is basically a Cloudformation template with serverless, with the SAM extension. And then we use Cloudformation to deploy, to provision our infrastructure. And then after that, our API got deployed and we were able to test it.